My mom's gone. She's nowhere to be found. Where would she be? She's gone, and we need to find her. My name is Nicki Bates, and my mom is Tammy Myers.
How old were you when your mother disappeared?
I was only 7 years old. It was just like a heavy weight, just a feeling like you couldn't breathe.
She would have called, she would have found a way to call.
You got 3 little kids, and they're missing their mom. And what do you say?
I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I know it was one of the toughest things I ever did. I'm Ryan Myers, and Tammy Myers was my wife. Even after we separated, we remained close.
My mom was the love of his life.
Tammy was loving and caring.
Fun, easygoing, electric.
An overall great person to be around.
Your mother meets a man who would soon play a major role in all of your lives. Who was that man?
William Greer. My mom and my dad split up, and she gets with him. This man's rich, he has money. We got to do all these fun things, so immediately we just were drawn to him until, we realized that our mom wasn't happy. When they were together, he was very abusive.
As a little girl, you remember seeing your mother in pain.
Yes, she was bleeding, she was bruised, she could barely walk.
Did she ever report any of this to police?
Not that I know of.
What happened on December 19th, 2006, in Greer's home?
There was an argument that ensued.
William Greer did not like the direction the conversation was going, retrieved his shotgun, and shot Tammy.
He's definitely among the worst of the worst. He's an evil murderer.
My name's Cameron Welch.
I'm Josh Wright,
Leslie Raymond. I was one of the U.S. Marshals.
One of the U.S. Marshals.
one of the U.S. Marshals hunting William Greer.
They find blood all over the house. They find the bullet holes.
Is William Greer still at the house?
No, he has fled. Nowhere to be found. He's just gone.
To Georgia.
New Orleans.
Kentucky.
America's Most Wanted.
By this time, he's making the TV scene.
We introduce you to William Greer.
When he saw himself on TV, he just got up and left.
To move on to the next place.
Our beloved Tammy.
America's Most Wanted, they were the first ones to interview us.
Did it give you some hope?
It did. They had a few leads, but it died down, and we didn't have anything else for years. Where is she? Where's William at?
You kind of went on a mission, didn't you?
I did.
What was that mission?
To not only find William, but to just keep my mom's name and her case alive.
She'd be a great deputy U.S. Marshal.
You took the words out of my mouth.
She's tenacious.
Yeah.
We love that.
The family wants somebody who's going to push hard to do what needs to be done.
We will never stop.
Justice is coming.
You always hear that time heals, it'll get better, it'll get easier. That is not true. I think it's harder as an adult without a mom than it was as a kid. You have graduations that she misses. She missed my wedding. She has 8 grandchildren that she will never meet.
Nicki Myers Bates lost her mother nearly 2 decades ago when she was just 7 years old. But she says no amount of time will heal this wound.
This is my family.
Now a mother of 3 herself, Nicki is still searching for her mother and fighting to bring the man who killed her to justice.
Pretty much when I became a teenager, I got my cell phone, You know, I read every article, every news video, I seen it, I read it.
Ryan, even when you talk about her today, you get emotional about it. Why is that?
I still love.
Still love her.
Ryan Myers says he and Tammy were just teenagers when they first fell in love. 20 when he asked her to marry him.
The first year we were together, we had a kid, and then following year had another kid. A few years later, we had Nicki.
Nicki says there wasn't much money to go around, but there was always more than enough love, especially between mother and daughter.
She was very loving. She was made to be a girl mom, even though she had two boys. She was very girly, full of life, fun, energetic.
Ryan worked long hours as a window installer, so Tammy could be a full-time mom. Then, fate dealt the Myers family a devastating blow.
My dad was working on top of a 3-story building. He got electrocuted and fell off and hit the concrete.
I fell 3 floors, broke my back and legs. And unfortunately, the company I work for didn't have insurance.
How did you pay for all this?
Well, I mean, essentially, Tammy had to work and try to pay some of the bills while I was down.
And she had no experience, so she did what she thought was easiest and became a stripper. Am I allowed to say that?
You sure you
Okay.
can say it?
She became a female dancer.
How did your dad take all of this?
I don't think he loved it. I think he wanted her to find another job, but she was like, it's fine, nothing's happening here, I'm just getting the money.
And so it was, until Tammy met a big spender named William Greer.
He was, as far as I know, a regular at the club. He threw a lot of money around.
Where did he get his money?
He owned a vending machine company. So her and my dad split up, and she gets with him.
Sometime in 2006, Tammy moved about an hour away to Spring, Texas, in this house with Greer and 2 sons from his first marriage. Nicki and her brothers would spend the weekends there.
Was he kind to you?
As far as I remember, yes. Always giving us money, trying to take us on trips.
Did your mom stop working as a stripper?
Yes.
Did you sense that William Greer was good for your mother?
When I first met him, yes.
But things would turn ugly over time, says Nicki. Not long before her mother went missing, Nicki says there were clear signs of physical abuse, which Tammy documented in these photos.
She stole his truck and came all the way to Cleveland from Spring, and she could barely get out of the car, and she was bleeding, she was bruised.
Nicki says her mom tried to cover it up.
She told us that it was a dirt bike accident, but she had told my stepmother that he had hit her with nunchucks.
What's nunchuck?
You see karate, the wooden things you swing around?
He hit her with that.
Yes.
Nicki says Greer came looking for his truck and her mother.
My dad was like, you need to get off my property. And he was arguing, saying, well, she stole my truck. And my dad's like, I don't care. You need to get off my property. You know, my dad always says, I wish I would have just shot him because your mom would still be here.
Nicki says she has since learned that her mother had been warned about Greer's propensity for violence by someone who knew him well, his ex-wife.
She would tell my mom that, you know, you need to leave him, he's dangerous.
Sadly, it seems like Tammy may have been thinking about doing just that, but ran out of time.
And is it true that the two of you were thinking about getting back together, talking about getting back together before she disappeared?
Yes, sir.
Then, as Christmas 2006 approached, Tammy mysteriously vanished.
I had a missed call from her, and I tried to call her back, and I didn't get a response.
I remember crying a lot, just being devastated, not only for me, but seeing my dad that way was just devastating.
And that's when this case took the first of many bizarre turns. Just 8 days before Tammy was reported missing, Greer was arrested for public intoxication.
Can you tell me your full name? William Joseph Greer.
This is Greer on dash cam video,
Come here with me.
confessing to 2 sheriff's deputies that he had shot Tammy.
Gun just went off. Oh my God, it's the worst thing I ever did was look in her eyes once.
Were you aware that William Greer had been arrested by sheriff's deputies at that time?
No, sir.
And in the next strange twist, Greer was released.
I was still lost to why, when somebody sit there and admitted to something, why you would just turn them loose so easily.
Back in 2006, Paul Lasko was a deputy for the Liberty County Sheriff's Office. In the early morning hours of December 22nd, Lasko and his partner got a call about suspicious activity on this road in Cleveland, Texas.
There was a vehicle, a truck in the ditch here, and there was nobody around it. The truck was running, the lights were on, door was open.
The whole thing was captured on this dash cam video. Lasko says that at the time, there was a fenced-in field bordered by a large wooded area.
My partner went down the driveway here. Next to the driveway was like a brush pile that was pulled up.
That's where Lasko's partner found the missing driver, a highly intoxicated William Greer.
William Joseph Greer.
It appeared that he had been using some sort of drugs.
That's what he acts like. He acts like he's on meth.
He was also half naked.
He had a button-up shirt on and no pants, no under. He was naked from the waist down.
Now, you've seen a lot of things. How strange was this?
This was pretty strange.
Where do you think your shoes or your boots are at?
All them things got too muddy and bogged down because it's a swamp out there.
Greer's clothing was never recovered, but much more alarming than his physical state was what Greer freely said to two detectives.
It was an accident, not a love with all my heart.
He said that he accidentally shot Tammy in the chest and that he watched her die.
The gun just went off. I couldn't believe what happened. Oh my God, it's the worst thing I ever did was look in her eyes while she died.
Greer told them the shooting had taken place at his home in Spring, about 40 miles southwest of Cleveland, a different county with a different sheriff. Back then, Sid Miller was a homicide detective in the Harris County Sheriff's Office. He would later learn that Harris County had been contacted by a Liberty County dispatcher and asked to send two deputies to Greer's home for a welfare check.
They peered through the windows, looked inside the house, and they didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary in their opinion.
Our dispatch notified us that Harris County went out there and everything looked fine.
Lasko says they attempted to question Greer some more, but by then he had sobered up and stopped talking.
You confessed to killing her.
Oh, no, I don't remember that part.
Without probable cause that a murder had occurred, all Greer could be charged with was public intoxication. So Lasko and his partner took him to the Liberty County Jail, where he was booked, released on bond the next day, and disappeared.
It's frustrating because we had him, and now he's gone.
Nicki says no one realized just how gone Greer was until days later, when Greer's sons from his first marriage returned from Christmas vacation with their mother.
And when their mom goes to drop them off, they start freaking out. We don't want to go home.
The boys had been with their mother since the day Tammy Myers disappeared. Now, 11 days later, they were telling their mother that the morning she picked them up, they heard their father shoot Tammy Myers. Their mother took the boys straight down to the sheriff's office for an interview. That's when Detective Miller got involved.
They indicated that sometime in the morning of December the 19th, between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., they heard Greer and Tammy arguing. One of them described hearing what sounded like Tammy running down the hallway and being thrown against the wall. He also described hearing a gunshot, and he heard William Greer make the comment about, "Are you dead? Are you still alive?"
At this point, they obtain a search warrant and they go into his house.
When Detective Miller arrived at the house, he discovered Greer's brother-in-law.
He was actually there cleaning out the house.
He told the detectives He didn't know the house was a crime scene.
And what was he cleaning up?
He was taking property out of the house. We learned that he had taken some guns out of there at the direction of Mr. Greer.
Still, says Miller, the house was clearly a crime scene.
There were so many bullet holes in his house, throughout this house. I noticed that there was like blood smear on some of the walls. I walked into the bedroom, you know, you had a mattress, soaked blood on the side of the mattress. There were bullet holes in the bedroom.
And so what William Greer had actually told those Liberty County deputies turned out to be true.
Yes.
One more thing you should know about that night. Deputies found Tammy's cell phone on the front seat of Greer's truck. They used it to call Tammy's mother, who Nicki says told deputies that Greer had been physically abusing her daughter.
The older I get, the more angry I get. They really failed not only her, but just everyone in the situation.
Nicki says it still infuriates her that on the night Greer confessed, a search warrant would have made all the difference.
Why didn't they seek a search warrant to get into the house that evening?
I think at that particular time, based on what Greer had told Liberty County, because of his intoxicated state, they couldn't verify or substantiate whether that was credible information.
Miller says that night, there just wasn't enough probable cause for a search warrant. And even after searching Greer's home, they still couldn't find Tammy.
We actually did a search of the house, and we had cadaver dogs go out and do a search of the property, and we didn't find anything.
Detective Miller says they also searched the woods where Greer had been arrested. Still, even without Tammy's body, the Harris County District Attorney's Office felt they had enough to charge Greer with first-degree murder. And on March 16, 2007, nearly 3 months after Greer's drunken confession, a grand jury voted to indict him. There was just one problem, says former Deputy U.S. Marshal Leslie Raymond.
He was in the wind. By the time they figured out a murder had occurred, William Greer was gone.
Our beloved Tammy, a daughter taken, life shaken.
Nicki Bates was just 9 years old when she and her brothers shared memories of their mother with the television show America's Most Wanted.
It reminds me of us spending time together.
Nicki hoped that viewers might recognize the man who had allegedly killed her mother and then disappeared, William Greer.
Did it give you some hope?
It did.
Once we got him on America's Most Wanted, we started getting tips.
Detective Miller says that after the first mention of Greer on the show, he and his partner were finally beginning to learn about the fugitive's first few days on the run.
The day after Greer got out of jail, he went to his sister's house and basically said that he had done something bad and he wanted to change his life and he was leaving town. So the sister had given him some money for that purpose.
From there, Greer had gone to Savannah, Georgia, to see his half-brother, Daniel Dobson. So Detective Miller and his partner did the same.
He said that he hit her with the gun and it went off. And I said, well,
This is a recording of Dobson being questioned.
He said she died in his arms, and he freaked out, went out and buried her.
And buried her to where nobody would find her.
That's the phrase he used, where nobody would find her.
When he finally admitted what he did, I did everything I could to get him off this property that day.
He had taken Greer to a truck stop and just dropped him off there, and he hadn't seen him since.
In July 2007, Greer had been on the run for 6 months when he got a job as a cook at this deli in New Orleans, working alongside this man, John Morales.
He told me that his name was Billy. When I tried to ask him what his last name was, he wouldn't tell me what his last name was.
Morales says he and the man he knew as Billy got along so well, they decided to room together. And Billy began to open up about his past.
Billy told me that he had kids. He told me that he had an ex-wife and that his ex-wife wasn't allowing him to see the kids, and that's why he was traveling.
Morales says it wasn't long before his new roommate began to drink heavily and became progressively stranger.
He would start crying and say that he didn't want to wind up in hell.
Even more disturbing, says Morales, were Greer's plans for the future.
He would say that he wanted to live off-grid, that he wanted to find another wife, you know, at some point and have more kids. Then he would take the downward spiral again and say, if I ever find out she's cheating on me, I'll kill her.
Then, says Morales, Greer began using drugs. The men parted ways and Morales moved to Florida. Weeks later, a friend from the deli called to say that the man they knew as Billy had just been featured on America's Most Wanted. Morales was one of 5 tipsters who called police. But by the time detectives arrived to investigate, Greer was gone.
Now, this is definitely the hat that was in that photo.
Left behind was his signature cowboy hat, a possible taunt aimed at his pursuers. It would take 2 more months before there was another credible tip, this time from Georgetown, Kentucky, where Greer had found God.
He just came into a service one Sunday morning.
Connie Jackson Osborne, pastor of the Victory Tabernacle Church, says she knew Greer as Billy Leslie. He said he was new to the area and was looking for handyman work. He offered to help around the church.
He seemed very nice, very personable. He got right in with different ones in the congregation, participated.
Billy even asked to be baptized, but when he learned that his photograph would be taken for posterity, Pastor Connie says he nearly backed out. But Greer changed his mind and allowed this photo to be taken of his baptism on August 26, 2007. 1 month later, a member of the congregation would see the now baptized Billy on America's Most Wanted.
And if I may quote one little passage from the Bible to you as a pastor, even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light.
Yes, he does. And it was funny when I found out he was wanted because he was living right across the street from the police station.
Hiding in plain sight, but by the time investigators arrived, Greer had taken off again.
He left in a hurry. His CD player is still turning.
This guy literally thought that he could victimize not only Tammy, but everybody else that he encountered while he was on the run, and kind of just thumbing his nose in our face.
More than 3 years had gone by with no credible leads when Cameron Welch, a deputy marshal with the Southern District of Texas U.S. Marshals Service, joined the case. Welch followed up old leads, hoping for new information.
Which one is Greer's house?
Dug deeper into Greer's past and found yet another ex-wife who told detectives that Greer had abused her as well.
He was able to convince these women that he was just a great guy and he would use them for everything that he needed, and then he would move on to the next one.
Welch spent 2 years chasing down new leads, but Greer was nowhere to be found.
So where do you go from there?
Back to square one, just keeping the pressure.
In 2012, Welch was assigned to another case. Deputy Marshal Leslie Raymond took over the now 5-year-long hunt for Greer and named it Operation Catch-a-Toe.
And why'd you name it that?
William Greer was missing a toe.
And how'd he lose that?
I think it was a bicycling accident when he was younger.
This is the famous missing toe.
It's a famous missing toe.
The Marshals believed that unique feature would eventually tip people off to Greer's true identity.
If you have a murderer in your house and this murderer's missing a toe, they're gonna easily put 2 and 2 together.
Do you think Greer's missing toe will help the U.S. Marshals get their man? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
In late 2012, when Deputy U.S. Marshal Leslie Raymond took over the hunt for William Greer, he studied the case and investigated new leads with no luck.
This is the best information.
Then, in 2016, Raymond and his now associate investigator, Deputy Josh Wright, returned to the last place Greer had been seen,
I just wanted to show you some pictures.
This time, the TV show Crime Watch Daily was helping keep the heat on the fugitive.
We spent some time in Kentucky traveling, interviewing people, following up on leads. I pretty much was sure that he was using the railways to move around, hopping trains, and the last good solid source put him on a train going southbound, and I said, this guy's in Mexico.
Raymond asked to have the outlaw placed on the U.S. Marshals' 15 Most Wanted list, which alerts law enforcement agencies worldwide to be on the lookout for Greer. A $25,000 reward was also offered for his arrest.
And money helps loosen lips.
And it wasn't long before that reward and Raymond's instincts appeared to be paying off.
We obtained information from a reliable source that William Greer had set up a new life south of the border in Mexico.
The deputies would not tell us who that reliable source was, but someone in Mexico had called in a tip, telling investigators that they knew where Greer was hiding out.
We'd investigated hundreds of tips over the course of this fugitive investigation, and so we knew that it had to be verified.
But U.S. Marshals don't have jurisdiction in Mexico, so Operation Cachito was now in the hands of Mexican authorities, who checked out the tip. While the Marshal's office was kept informed at every turn, Mexican police were now surveilling the man they all hoped was William Greer.
I can tell you I did not sleep. Joss and I were anxiously awaiting to find out what the results were.
The next morning, they got the confirmation they hoped for. The man spotted in Mexico was indeed William Greer. Now, he had to be captured. Mexican authorities learned that Greer was living practically off the grid, down this dirt road in the tiny southern town of Taxco. He had a wife and 2 young children.
People tell me he was very reserved. He was very nice, very polite, hardworking guy, but very reserved.
Paulina Gomez, a producer based in Mexico City, recently traveled to Taxco for 48 hours and learned that Greer had most likely been in Mexico for about 6 to 7 years. He met his new wife while living in the Mexican state of Chiapas. By the time they moved to Taxco, they had an infant daughter and toddler son named William.
He's the biological father.
Yes, of these 2 kids.
By 2017, locals say Greer had been living in Taxco for about 3 years.
We called him El Gringo.
You didn't know his name?
No.
Tilo Perez lived next door to the fugitive and says he was a good neighbor.
He was calm. He didn't mess with anyone.
We had learned that he had a carpentry company. He was building furniture, and he employed a couple employees.
Greer had been a master of avoiding arrest, but on the morning of November 28, 2017, his days on the run finally came to an end, when Greer was taken by surprise by a swarm of undercover police.
The U.S. Marshals Service would like to announce the arrest of William Joseph Greer.
He completely denied that it was him. I just wish I could have been there to see his face when they removed his shoe.
They did remove the shoe?
Absolutely.
And what did they see?
A missing toe.
Operation Cachito.
Correct.
Had finally succeeded.
That's right. It was a good feeling.
And I wasn't crying, he was crying. We might have teared up.
I might have teared up.
Nicki was 18 years old when she got the news that her mother's killer had finally been captured.
I just cried. I just remember crying because it was not expected. It was just an overwhelming feeling.
Greer was promptly flown to George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, where he was arrested on U.S. soil.
These were the handcuffs used on William Greer.
And how satisfying was that?
Extremely satisfying.
Leslie Raymond says Greer actually recognized him from all the TV coverage.
He saw me and said, "Hey, I know who you are. I'm your biggest fan."
He was exactly how I imagined he'd be. Very arrogant, very eager to tell us how he eluded us.
And that's really what we were interested in as fugitive investigators. We wanted to know how. How did he get away for so long? And how did he get to Mexico?
The deputy marshals say they always suspected that Greer had been getting around on 18-wheelers and trains.
Greer confirmed that he did end up taking a train from Kentucky, and he headed west until he found another train heading south. And that's how he ended up crossing into Mexico.
Lean up against the wall right there at your chest.
Raymond and Wright delivered Greer to the sheriff's office, where Sid Miller, now a sergeant investigator, attempted to interrogate him.
I'm trying to find Tammy, you know. That's really why you're here, okay?
Miller tried to push Greer to tell him where he had buried Tammy.
And I was hoping I'd be able to call the family tonight and give them some good news.
Greer suggested that he would cooperate.
We're gonna get this done, man. I'm not here to play around.
But instead, he asked for an attorney and shut down the interview.
Now, whether you guys are willing to work with me or not, that's yet to be seen. But I'm here to work with you guys. But I need to talk to you about it.
With Greer behind bars, it was now up to the Harris County District Attorney's Office to try the case.
I was like, okay, we're finally gonna have some closure.
But what ended up happening stunned just about everyone.
You were disappointed, weren't you?
Greatly disappointed.
It was now 2023, nearly 6 years since William Greer had been captured. And now the 58-year-old was still sitting in this jail awaiting trial. COVID and the legal process had slowed the proceedings to a crawl. Painful, says Nicki, who longed for justice, and finally locating her mother's missing remains.
Recently, around the trial date, I would have dreams that I was digging and I would just find her in the most random places.
Sid Miller was prepared to testify at trial.
What's the strongest evidence you have against
Two children, hearing what they heard.
Both of Greer's sons, who believe they heard their father shoot and kill Tammy Myers, were on the witness list. And while Greer's brother was now deceased, the prosecution had that recording of what he told detectives back in 2007.
He said that he hit her with the gun and it went off.
And then, of course, there was Greer's dash cam confession.
Oh my God, it's the worst thing I ever did was look in her eyes while she died.
Coupled with, obviously, the evidence that we found at the house, the blood, the bullets. Seems like a strong case to me.
But Nicki says the prosecution was nervous, worried that they were missing a critical piece of evidence, Tammy's body. Only days before trial, Nicki says she and her family were contacted by Assistant DA Stephanie Abner about a potential plea deal to avoid a trial.
She said, would y'all consider manslaughter if he tells you where she's at? And I said, you know what? Yes, we will. We just want to know where our mom's at. We want a resting place where we can go to, where our children can go to. So we took the deal because they also made it seem like there was not another choice, that he would probably walk free if we went to trial.
As a condition of the deal, Greer was now required to show detectives where he had buried Tammy's body.
I had to check him out of the jail. I had our warrant team with us because he was such a flight risk.
Nicki says when she heard where they all ended up, she was crushed. They were searching for her mother not far from where Greer first confessed to killing her, and way too close to the home Nicki grew up in.
He walked up and down the road in cuffs right next to my dad's house.
That went on for 3 days, says Sid Miller. Nothing was found. Investigators then called off the search. Greer still got his deal.
We were told he will get his deal only if he tells us where he buried her. I think it's bullcrap, and I think that he just, once again, is getting off for murdering her.
The district attorney's office declined our request for an interview, but gave us this statement. We believe Greer was acting in good faith and tried to lead law enforcement to her body. So much time has passed and the terrain has changed, but we believe he tried. On January 22, 2024, Greer appeared in court for sentencing. It had been 17 years since Nicki laid eyes on him.
You know, everyone kept telling me he's not gonna even look at you. He'll be ashamed. And he walked into court and he stared right at us.
Were you staring back?
Yes.
Did you make eye contact
Yes.
with him?
I was just trying to let him know, like, we are not giving up, we're not backing down, we are not scared of him.
She trusted you. We trusted you.
Frustrated and angry, Nicki gave a victim impact statement on behalf of her family.
We had to look at the man who murdered our mom, walk around our neighborhood trying to remember where he put her body. How do you not remember? How was I not eating at you every day since?
I don't know what I was expecting, maybe him to talk back, I don't know, but I stopped and I said, do you remember? And he just stared at me.
You say you're a changed man, that you're a Christian, and if that's the case, you'll continue to talk and help us try to find her. You want forgiveness? That's what I need. I need to know and I need to find her.
Greer's sentence for killing Tammy Myers and fleeing is 10 years.
Do you have anything to say, sir, as to why sentence should not now be pronounced against you?
No.
With time served, he will be free in 3 years, perhaps even sooner.
10 years for taking someone's life away and then just disposing of them like garbage, that's not enough.
If you ask me, he should be in jail forever.
Leslie Raymond, now retired, says Greer better behave.
If he does anything, I'll come back out of retirement. I'll find him again.
Are you worried that, and it could be as we are speaking now in as little as 3 years, there may be more victims?
I am concerned about that.
Are you as well, Cameron?
Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, the search for Tammy continues without law enforcement.
Morning, and thank you for being here.
Texas EquiSearch is a nonprofit volunteer search and recovery organization that offers their services to law enforcement and families for free.
So everyone, this is Nicki here. This is Tammy's daughter.
Hi. Not gonna make me cry. And you have all the volunteers out here. I don't know any of them. And they have kept me updated and just, you know, made me feel so loved.
We ask that you pray for the family. I know they're looking for closure.
They prayed over us.
They have committed to helping a daughter on a mission.
But being out here so close to home and just possibly close to finding her is a little overwhelming.
It won't be easy, says canine handler Brenda Peak.
How large an area are you searching today?
Total about 4 acres.
She says even highly trained dogs will have trouble detecting the scent of bones buried nearly 2 decades ago.
A lot of people won't take this task because it's a difficult one. It's challenging. Okay, so these are the search areas.
On this day in February 2024, there were 3 cadaver dogs with handlers.
Watch the barbed wire.
And more than 30 volunteers covering the 4 acres. And a spot that Nicki and her dad requested to be searched.
Can I show you something? I think right here, my dad works with the owner of the land that goes all the way back here. It takes a lot to not let it consume me. I try to focus on my kids and my husband, but they will tell you I'm very determined. If I just have free time at home, I'm on my computer looking at maps, looking at old areas, what they looked like then, what they look like now. That opening to that left, it could be it.
After searching for about 5 hours, the team called it quits for the day. But there was a glimmer of hope. All 3 canines had reacted to something in the same area.
They think that it's possible that he drove into this area and that maybe he buried her somewhere over here since all 3 dogs have picked up on this area.
But Texas EquiSearch didn't have the right tools to dig properly, so they committed to trying again. Until then, Nicki will be out searching on her own.
Do you believe she will one day be found?
I'm not sure. I am trying to stay hopeful, but between weather and animals and if he's telling the truth or not, that it's, you know, it could be hard.
I'm hoping we can put this to rest and give Tammy a place, get these kids some closure in their life, somewhere they can pay their respects.
My kids are young, but they are fully aware of what's happening. They just want so badly for her to be found. I'm just trying to stay hopeful for myself, but also for my children, and, you know, just keep looking because I don't want to give up.
A fertility doctor and his wife, partners in business and marriage, until she's found dead after an alleged fall.
Mother of twins, a boy and a girl.
Could a doctor who gives women hope in life take a woman's life?
He was, in many eyes, a saint.
48 Hours, Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
I'm Anne-Marie Green, and welcome to Post-mortem. This week, I'm joined by correspondent Peter Van Sant and producer Judy Rybak to discuss their latest episode, The Day My Mother Vanished. If you haven't listened to this episode yet, you know what you can do. You can find it just below this one in your podcast feed. So this case was really unlike others this season because authorities didn't have to figure out who killed Tammy Myers. They had to find the person who admits to killing her. That person is William Greer, and it takes over a decade for authorities to find him, to track him down, and arrest him. That happens in 2017. When did 48 Hours learn about this case?
This case came to us via Michelle Sagona, one of the development producers for this hour, who actually used to work on America's Most Wanted and interviewed Nicki when she was 9 years old. So all the footage that we have in the show, Michelle was there for that. So she heard about Greer's arrest and the plea deal and brought it to us.
Which made it a very personal story for us
Yes.
to work on. This is a case that infuriates, inspires. The people that we met along the way here, some of them are just remarkable characters. But how this case turned out is just shocking to me and to Judy. And we're still trying to deal with the aftermath of this because it's a very frustrating case.
Well, let's start with Tammy's daughter, Nicki. She is such a pivotal character in this story. What was it like interviewing her?
Well, she is one of the heroes in this story. Such an inspiring young woman. Try to imagine, anyone listening to this, go back when you were 7 years old. It's a few days before Christmas, and your mother disappears, vanishes off the face of the earth. You never see or hear from her again, and they were so close. And Nicki was 9 years old when she was first interviewed by America's Most Wanted. And she actually read a little poem, and she helped carry the show and inspire a nation to try to find the person responsible for taking her mother away from her. So interviewing her, you sense her enormous heart. She's a gentle soul. And you also sense the pain of all of these years, of all the things in her life she wasn't able to share with her mother because she was taken from them. And the hunt for justice is in her DNA and such a part of her.
Yeah, and we noted that she didn't cry in the interview. She never got emotional. That's how poised she is, how accustomed she is to talking about the story, telling the story, trying to get attention for her mother, for the case. I mean, she is really, really amazing. And, you know, I have to say, I attribute that to her mother and her father. Her mom must have been amazing because Nicki's so strong, and her dad did such a good job of raising her alone. It's remarkable, really.
What was so powerful for us was Nicki's dad, Ryan Myers. Now, folks, I'm going to do a little Texan here for you because he is a classic cowboy, right? He's got the look right out of the old Marlboro cigarette ads or a Clint Eastwood Western. He's got a way of talking, that Texas cowboy talk. He starts talking about Tammy, the love of his life, and he starts blubbering. I'm sitting across from him, and I'm almost tearing up. He loved her so much, and the tears that he sheds, and throughout our hour, you see that. It just breaks your heart, and that helps us get so invested in their stories because we so desperately want this to have a happy ending.
Yeah, I just thought this guy doesn't deserve all of this. It's been such a tough road for him in so many ways.
He's so sweet, too. So sweet.
Okay, let's get to the case. Tammy goes missing on December 19th, 2006. But on December 22nd, 2006, authorities find a highly intoxicated, half-naked man on the side of the road. Who was that and what was going on? Why did they end up out there?
We laugh because, folks, try to just imagine this scenario. A couple of deputies with a rural sheriff's department. They have a call of a pickup truck that's gone off the road. They get there. There's no driver. It's pitch black. They're looking around. They got their flashlights out. And then, by George, here comes a guy out of the darkness wearing just a shirt, no underwear, pants, anything. And what a sight to see. And he comes up and they have a dash cam on them and he says, "I'm sorry, it was an accident. The gun just went off." And the officers, "Well, what are you talking about?" "Tammy, my wife, and the gun went off and I accidentally shot her in the chest and I watched her die." Now, how are you taking all this in? You're just out on patrol. Here's a guy half naked and he's saying something absolutely what?
Yeah.
And not just that, he tells them where it happened. I mean, he tells them everything they need to know.
Yeah.
Right? But I think what happened was because they were caught between two sheriff's offices, two jurisdictions, he fell through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
But I mean, to me, it was stunning that he was out the next day. I mean, I get it. There's two different jurisdictions. But even when I was watching the dash cam, you know, he's intoxicated. He's kind of in and out. It's not sort of a crystal clear statement, but it's enough, you would think, to hold him just a little bit longer.
Right.
Well, remember after he sobered up a bit and they were asking, "No, what did you say about what you did to her?" "Oh, well, I didn't do that." And then he went quiet on them. Also, they sent a couple of deputies over to the house, the other county, to do a welfare check. And they knocked on the door. Nobody answered. They couldn't see anything as they peered through the windows. Now, they didn't go in. I think if they had gone in, they would have seen blood, and this would have a very different ending to it. But the fact that they didn't, according to the officers, he was clearly intoxicated. You know, I think, is this guy just talking out of the side of his mouth? Is this just the alcohol talking to us? It's their county, it's our county, and it just falls through the cracks.
Yeah. And no one goes back to the site where his truck was.
No, they did. They would eventually go back and look for Tammy there. Yeah, they searched for Tammy's body there.
Now remember, in his truck, they find Tammy's cell phone. So, I mean, you have this link, and eventually they get a search warrant, and they go over and go inside that house. And who do they find, Judy, cleaning up in there?
His brother-in-law.
Now, I had a question about that as well. Because, I mean, what did he think he was doing there? And even if he didn't suspect anything, once the cops show up, you would think he would have started to ask himself, well, why did he ask me to clean up his house?
I mean, we don't really know, right? They didn't tell us much about that. They didn't charge him with anything. He claimed he didn't know that a crime had occurred. So who knows? I mean, we'll never know how much the brother-in-law knew.
This is clearly a crime scene, and it's a very odd part of this story that is full of oddities.
Right. But like you point out, he was never charged with anything at all. But, you know, later, once authorities hear what Greer's sons say they heard, they decided they're going to charge him. They're going to charge William Greer with first-degree murder. The sons say that they hear him arguing with Tammy, and did they hear gunshots? I can't recall.
They heard. Yeah,
okay.
There was arguing. They heard a shot, and then it later came out that they also claim they could hear their father speaking to Tammy, and he says, "Are you dead? Are you still alive?"
Right.
And authorities considered what they heard, including this quote, to be powerful evidence, combined with a man who's confessing, half naked out in the dark, but confessing that he had shot Tammy and watched her die. Hello? I think we got ourselves a case here, right?
Well, even if we don't have a body.
There's no body, but there's everything but.
Right.
I mean, you've got her blood in his house. You've got her phone in his car. Have him on dash cam saying that he shot her and watched her die. And then he flees, folks. What innocent guy flees and then he lies? I mean, it seems it's on a platter to me, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. I've seen a lot less in bodiless trials. Yeah.
So, as you guys say, William Greer, he's on the run. But thanks to shows like America's Most Wanted, Crime Watch Daily, authorities always seem to have a pulse on him, but he's still able to get away. I mean, people watch these shows, but he's still kind of popping up in different communities, making friends.
Right.
And just kind of bopping along. How was he able to do that?
That's true, right? He was still bopping along. People are watching across the country. You know, it's funny because we asked, like, was this a good thing or a bad thing? Because every time he saw himself on television, he would get up and take off, right? And the Marshals said it's actually a good thing. They want him to keep moving because eventually he'll make a mistake and they'll catch him.
Interesting. And he's not using cards because he's got a bunch of cash from his business, I guess, right?
Probably. And, you know, women would do things for him, you know, pay for things and, yeah.
And in New Orleans, when he worked at a deli, they paid him in cash.
Right.
So there wasn't a paper trail.
Right. And he rode a bicycle everywhere.
And he was quite the charmer.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable how agile he was in being able to just pick up and go and then ingratiate himself with someone else like that and just start another new life. And also, think of the casualties that he left behind, because these women, many of them cared deeply. Some of them fell in love with him. But once he got word he was on America's Most Wanted, the most recent edition of this case, he's gone.
The U.S. Marshals were involved in this case, and they were so invested in the case. Even one held on to the handcuffs that they used to arrest William Greer. It's a little trophy, I guess. What was it like interviewing them?
For me, this was one of the great delights of our show. Folks, we love doing stories in Texas because everyone seems to be a character actor down there. And these U.S. Marshals are right off of a cowboy set. They are plain talking, straight talking. They are absolutely driven. They have a saying they told us when we did the interview. Their saying is, justice is coming. It's just like something Clint Eastwood would say, right?
Wow.
I mean, that's the nature of these guys, is that Texas tradition from the Wild West days. The marshal was the law of the county. And these guys carry on that tradition with dedication, and they have enormous heart. I mean, don't you think they're special?
That's a good word for it. Yeah. I don't know. Have you ever done a story with the Marshals before? Or is this your first? Because it was my first, and I was so impressed with them.
I've done a Marshal story in other states, but this is the first time in Texas.
I was super impressed with them. They're so helpful and warm and inviting, and you know, they couldn't do enough for us. And yeah, they're really special guys.
And who else would come up with Operation Catch a Toe?
Leslie Raymond is such a character. The guy with the big cowboy hat on, such a character.
But it was appropriate. He's missing a toe. It's a pretty distinctive feature. After a bike accident, William Greer loses his toe. What'd you make of the name?
I loved it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they do catch not the toe but everything else, right? Because the toe is forever missing, but they caught everything else. They catch William Greer. He's started a new life, and I guess true to what you guys said about him as he was on the run, you know, he's found another lady, and he's heartbreakingly started another family.
Can we talk about the fact that he had the nerve to name his new son William? I mean, it's just so stunning. The whole thing is so stunning.
Yeah. So William Greer's sentence for killing Tammy Myers is just 10 years. And with time served, he'll be free in maybe 3 years, perhaps even sooner. Why on earth was his sentence so short?
Well, that's the sentence for second-degree manslaughter. I mean, they can't
they sort of have to go with the sentencing guidelines, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think they had a choice. The minute he was sentenced, he was up for parole. They denied him. And in 2 years, he gets another bite at the apple. And then in 3 years, he's out regardless.
No matter what.
Right.
Did you talk to the district attorney? I mean, is it clear why they allowed Greer to plead down to a lesser charge, second-degree manslaughter, instead of first-degree murder? And the fact that they honored the plea, even though they never did find Tammy's body.
They sent us this statement, which we actually put in the show. We believe Greer was acting in good faith and tried to lead law enforcement to her body. So much time has passed and the terrain has changed, but we believe he tried. We just have that one statement from them that, it's a clear statement, but it doesn't feel right.
Nicki and her family continued to search for her mother. Peter, you were present for a search of Tammy's remains, and you actually participated in the prayer circle that they had there. What was that like?
It was deeply emotional. We all felt a tie to Nicki. We'd spent a lot of time with her, and she's such a big-hearted person and has gone through so much pain. And when you see the volunteers out there, you could understand how Nicki shed some tears for the first time around us and also had all of this hope. It was inspiring and it was heartbreaking.
I was standing next to Peter during that prayer circle, and I could tell that he was getting a little emotional, so I whipped out my iPhone and got a shot of him. I thought it was kind of a nice moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was powerful, and we hope against hope that this circle can be closed for Nicki, but it's going to be very difficult. And that was part of the emotion for us as journalists out there. Let's hope when EquiSearch goes back out there, maybe they'll luck out. Maybe Nicki's dream will finally be realized.
Wow. Well, of course, another great hour. Judy, Peter, thank you so much. This has been another fantastic, fascinating discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Always a pleasure.
Join us next Tuesday for another Postmortem and watch 48 Hours on Saturdays, 10, 9 Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. And if you are liking the show, please rate and review 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts and follow 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen ad-free on the Amazon Music and Wondery app or with a 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.